All right, guys, my name is Eric, product specialist here at TOA. Again, good to be here. Thank you so much for attending. We always appreciate it. We're doing this for you guys. We want to make sure that we're bringing you the best value when it comes to the commercial audio industry. And we want to make sure you guys are in the know and that you guys are, on the same page as we are on a daily basis. Once again, we are broadcasting live to Facebook. We're also on Zoom, which many of you are on. If your colleagues weren't able to get in on the Zoom webinar, make sure you guys let them know. Head over to our Facebook page. We're live. They could just log on if they have an account. Go to the timeline, and you'll see our live video broadcasting right there. So very, very simple. And, it's okay if they didn't get in. Make sure they get in. They can check us out on Facebook. All right, guys. So for today's webinar, this is a carryover of our Advanced Insight series. And the topic for today is adapting to infrastructural limitations. And in today's environment, it is very, very crucial. We are continuing our Advanced Insight series with the goal of providing you guys and your team, again, with the most relevant insights into the commercial AV market. And again, guys, every single month we're doing this towards the end of the month. We're a little bit earlier than usual because of the holidays. So again, we'll be doing it next month around the same time, which is going to be the second to last week or the third to last week of the month. I believe it's on the 18th as well. I got to double check that, but we'll let you guys know. And again, our main purpose here is to give you guys value. We want to make sure that you leave today with information that either you might have in your arsenal, or you can build upon and be able to utilize that with your customers and take it forward. And again, spreading the value to not only yourselves but to your customers as well. And we'll make it a win-win situation here. So for today, we're going to address problems that we're seeing in the marketplace where end users and integrators are challenged to successfully install multiple products in order to expand overall communication and safety. So no business, big or small, should compromise on the proper equipment needed to do that. And it doesn't matter who you guys are, how big your business is, how small your business is. These are very important points. So we'll get into that in just a moment. Let me just introduce myself if you guys aren't aware. Again, my name is Eric. I've been with TOA for about 2 years. I come from an audio background. I come from the pro audio world or the MI world. I've done music retail. Music is my passion. Audio is my passion. I've been all around. I'm 33 years old. I'm glad to be a part of TOA, excuse me. And especially during these times, I mean, I don't know about my colleagues, but it feels like we're getting closer and closer as a group. Even though we're so far apart, and with things like Zoom and whatnot, we're able to just, really talk amongst ourselves and share our ideas and grow stronger as a team. So let me introduce our panelists one by one. We're going to start with Jim McGinnis. Jim, are you there? Can you tell us about yourself?
I am. I'm here.
There he is.
There. I'm everywhere. No, I've been with TOA about 8 years now. I also have audio background, a lot of experience in the surround sound and home audio applications, and also pro audio, including broadcast and MI, similar to Eric. So here at TOA, I help anchor the product support group with technical questions, answering many emails, doing designs, etc. So anytime you need assistance, give me a call.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and Jim also is the front man or the guy that actually gets your designs and then makes them what they are. And Jim does a great job in doing that. And we'll get into that process a little bit further down the road here. Let's bring in last, but actually not mid, but not least, I guess, is Dan. Dan, can you introduce yourself? Dan, you there?
Dan is muted.
Dan is muted. Okay.
Let's unmute myself.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
I'm obviously the oldest of the group. I'm still figuring this stuff out. I'm the engineering manager for TOA Electronics. I'm in charge of the product support group and engineering and product development for the U.S. So I've been in the audio business longer than most of you have been alive. I come from the pro audio background, touring audio background. So I've been with TOA about 12 years total.
Thanks, Dan. Good introduction. And last but not least, the man that has helped us on multiple occasions, who is not a TOA employee, but I feel like he is. Greg. Welcome, Greg, in. Greg, please introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Greg. I'm with Outreach Effects. It's a company I started about 20 years ago. We're an AV install integration company, and excited to jump into today's topic because it's one that makes me smile and cringe all at the same time of thinking of the different experiences over the past few years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. And guys, I forgot to mention, actually, we also are hosting, or I am hosting podcast Sound Supply. We are delivering the webinars on a monthly basis. The Sound Supply podcasts are delivered on a weekly basis. Usually run about 10 minutes. You can get them via audio or YouTube, and LinkedIn, I believe, is where we're also posting, and Facebook. So keep in mind, those are very easily accessible, and they, quick snippets on weekly topics around commercial AV. All right, guys. So as you can see, we have 3 awesome panelists, great team members. Great. Greg is also an awesome guy. We're going to basically have this as like a round robin scenario. I'll pose a topic and we'll have a couple guys chime in. And if you guys have any questions, anyone that's watching today, please shoot those in the chat, and we'll answer those as time goes on. This is a very casual, laxed webinar. We like to just answer them as they go on. If we don't get to them during the webinar, we'll make sure that we answer them after everybody's done speaking. So guys, thanks again for being here. Let's see how many people we got in here. Yeah, we got quite a few people. Let me see if I can get some names here. Bear with me, guys. Okay, we got Adam, Barbara, Ed, Jeff, Jessica, Karen, Matthew, Najee. What's going on, Najee? Partner Van Dedham, Paul Walter, Reggie, TP. Guys, that's just a few. Thanks for being here. We always appreciate it. Let's take a ride down the infrastructural limitations highway. Okay. Let's start with a question. Greg, this goes to you first. Sorry to put you on the spot, but Greg, you do work out in the field, obviously. You're the guy that is working either, you're the integrator, you're working with the manufacturer, you're working with designers, with engineers. So when you're working through installs, how have you addressed infrastructural limitations before?
It's a fun question because it's one that I find that we face more often than not. And it especially happens when we have a takeover system, when someone has designed a system and now we're walking into it and we suddenly realize that there's a major infrastructural holdup in order for the system to grow, in order for what it to be, for what it needs to be. I can think of one time in particular, we had a system that was fully designed, and for us, we installed it, we finished installing it and got to inspections, and the fire marshal came through and said, well, great. So how do we get this thing to turn off in case of an emergency? And we went, no one designed that, because no one thought that through. And it was suddenly a huge problem because the entire infrastructure was not built or designed around any forethought at all into fire safety. That's just one example of probably 20 or 30 times in which we've walked into situations similar to that, and we've had to pivot on the fly and figure out a solution that will work, and usually forced to go back to other experts and say, so how would you do this? And how can we get this done without completely compromising the system and or compromising the budget?
Perfect. Dan, going over to you real quick, just to piggyback off that on what Greg said and his insight, position that he's kind of in line in the chain there. Coming from engineering, can you give us examples based on that?
Yeah, of course. For new installations, there are a lot of designers in projects these days, and because of building information management systems like some of the AutoCAD products, some of these issues are becoming less. But I can't tell you the number of times I've walked into a facility and they've specified 12 runs of 22.2 going through a 3/4 inch conduit, and that's just not going to work. So it creates problems. It's very important to coordinate with the design team, the engineering team, to make sure that all of the infrastructure that you need is there. If there are no floor pockets in the floor for that conference table, somebody needs to raise their hand. And that's usually not the electrical contractor.
Gotcha. Jim, you were laughing a bit there. Let's since you're on the front lines of the design phase, what's your take on all this?
Well, all the points that have been brought up are right on point. And, it depends on whether we're, starting from scratch or coming in, such as what Greg was implying about. So when we're coming in from a fresh start, we can advise so much more easily to the particular contractor or end user what we recommend, and in some cases, what's required by various code to get the job done properly. Sometimes the expectations are kind of far apart, and we have to get customers to get realigned with what's in their mind and what reality requires. And then there's the other times when you come in on existing problems. As Greg pointed out, sometimes you're brought in to correct a problem or something's going on that isn't right, and then you find out, like Dan says, they ran extremely light cable inside of inappropriate conduit, or it's just way too light for the job, that type of thing. So whenever we have a fresh start, it's much easier. Correcting it after the point is always that concern because of dollars, and then of course they want to add something to that. But there are other questions that we like to ask besides just the design phase of it. But what is the expectation of its use? So how do you want to use the equipment? So It's not always just a matter of what equipment do you stick in there as a design. Often we have multiple different ways of doing that. But what is the expected use? And is there anything for the future that you can think of that they may expand to? Because you might want to lay the infrastructure first.
Just, can I jump off of that for one?
Greg, absolutely.
I can tell you that one of the biggest mistakes that I see clients do is wait too long to get a professional involved, whether it be bringing in someone like the manufacturer to help design that system alongside them, or an AV integrator. There's been so many times I've walked into systems where they're like, right, we've already gotten you halfway there. We already got cables to where they need to be, and they're the complete wrong set of cables. And at this point, the walls are sealed up. There's nothing I can do about it except try to figure out how to use the wrong equipment. And that's never a good situation, and it always compromises the final product. And so just what you were saying a minute ago, like how important it is to get people involved at the right stage of this game. And that's when the walls are open, before a single cable has been pulled, before a conduit's been laid, when we're in the plan stage, when there's a set of blueprints. That's when the AV professionals need to get involved right from the blueprints.
Let me jump in here. We just had a recent project where we were given a large factory floor to cover with PA, and a flat representation of where all of the zones were and where the coverage areas were. And we asked a couple of questions, and I'm going to share my screen here and show you what the flat unit. Let's see. I guess there we go.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So if you can see that, it's quite a bit different than a flat representation. That's a 30-foot ceiling with 22-foot racks over here. It radically changes the design of the system. So if we don't have all the information, it's very difficult for us or any designer to put together a system like that.
Yeah, I might jump in on that. Often we'll get a request for assistance on a design, and like Dan says, we don't get all the information, and they don't tell us about all of the levels that are in there with all the rack spaces. So we initially think, oh, it's a wide open space and we can lay out speakers. But once you start putting up rack spaces and you're trying to get coverage between various aisles, et cetera, we don't know whether there's machinery in there. And so once we get a set of plans, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I had one situation where we were asked to put speakers in this room. It was about a 60 by 60 room, and they were just looking for some ceiling speakers in and spread throughout the thing. We were like, great, no problem. We laid it all out, got there to start to look at the actual project to install it, only to find out that they never showed us a ceiling reflection, and there was a 40 by 40 sunroof. And I'm like, well, where am I supposed to put speakers? You've got 40 feet of this by 40 feet of this covered in glass. And we had to go to the complete wrong set of speakers because no one bothered to give us all of the drawings. They just gave us the general floor plan. No one gave us a ceiling reflection.
Wow.
Yeah, are there any architects in the audience?
Yeah, that's when you might have to go
there. To let you know that speakers are physical objects and require space to install. That's it.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Good stuff. Jim, just to piggyback on what Greg was saying on how important it is to get the information you need at a certain point within the process, or use the word stages. In terms of design, you did some work with a client, Cameron. Am I saying that right, Jim?
That's
Cameron?
correct. Uh-huh.
Cameron. Car dealership. Just, it's briefly, and it might have been challenging. I'm not too familiar with it, so please, talk as much as you'd like on it, but explain how you tackled it. Maybe there were some challenges, how you met their needs before the actual design took place. So maybe how you actually gather that information.
Sure.
And how important that is.
Yeah. So we got the request actually through our representative out in the Midwest, and he had his client, Cameron, who's working on a car dealership. And it's one of these projects that can roll out into multiple places. So they wanted to get a good footing in the first location. So in this particular case, they have a showroom and business office scenario, and then they have a collision center at the same time. So we went back and forth. They supplied some diagrams, et cetera, but we didn't always have all the information in the beginning. So it took a couple of times to go back and forth. Gotcha. And they were very, agreeable to getting all the information, which was really great. I mean, that's the best part. The worst part is when you have a job and, can you get me more information? No, that's as much as we got. And then we start guessing. But these guys were really great. And they came back and gave us more information, how the various sections were laid out, whether we were going to steel for mounting or whether we're going to be inlaid in ceilings and that type of thing. The assistance I got from them was, because I couldn't get pictures and certain pieces of it, I asked the contractor to say, well, where can speakers be placed to give me a little bit of an aid. And once we had that, we laid out a basic diagram and what they were going to need to get the sound that they were requesting. And so the project went forward. They ordered the equipment for the collision side of things and got that installed. And it wasn't even quite finished. And the end user, the dealership itself, were seemingly very pleased with the outcome of the sound. They had plenty of power because, of course, in the collision bay, it can get noisy. So they wanted to have enough oomph to get over the background noise, which is one of the factors that we have to ask about. What is the ambient noise in there? Absolutely. And they were really quite happy. So they're really excited about getting the dealership side of things going. And that's coming up very shortly, but it's a moving project.
Okay, excellent. You brought up a good point, and you kind of struggled when you said it. Was client, I guess, how important is it for the client to be open and willing to give you the information you want? Maybe, Greg, do you see that as a boundary sometimes in your projects where either information is hidden or you're struggling to get what you need from a client?
Yeah, that actually happens fairly regularly, where trying to get the right information out of the client is really hard. Right. Just the other day, I was on a phone call with a client and we asked them, great, this looks like a fairly simple install. The only thing we need to know about is your basement. Is there a drop ceiling underneath your basement? Just trying to think through our wire runs. And he wrote back, I don't know what a drop ceiling is. And we went, okay, I guess we're going to have to do an actual physical site survey on this one, where it was a pretty simple job and I could have gotten away without one. But sometimes it's not that clients don't want to give you the right information. They just don't know all of the right answers, or they think they know what they're referring to, but they might have their terms mixed or things just not quite in the right order. or they don't realize it's not something you don't need to know. The other problem that I face with clients is they have a budget in their mind and they are not always willing to tell you what that budget is. And so it's a little bit of a guessing game because they don't want to give you a number and then you design them up. They want it to be the right system. And so what I've tried to help clients understand is, great, let's have a need analysis. Let's really talk about what your needs are. Let's talk about all of the different ways that you want to use the system now and in the future, and any potential things you might want to do in the future. Then let's design your system. Then let's see where it sits on your budget. And if it doesn't work, let's look what we can do within your budget.
Perfect. Jim and Dan, your thoughts on I know today, budgeting is huge. I mean, it's got to be one of the driving forces currently, in the market, besides getting them what they need and what they want. Obviously, there's going to be boundaries in terms of, what we can spec. Jim, your thoughts on that?
It's actually one of the first questions I ask in the preliminary interview with whoever I'm working with, whether it be the rep or the dealer or the end user. Do we have something we can shoot for? Because so many times, we get a situation where, they put up a couple $1 million structure, at the end they go, oh, we needed paging or audio in the background. Yeah, that'll be like what, a couple $100, right? And it's the thinking on that is like an afterthought almost. So we try to bring people into reality, but we try to do it gently where we can, work with them to give them something that'll work for their space, for their initial thought on how they wanted to use it. But the budget's always a top-notch question. How much do we have to work with? Because, you can't, in old terms, you can't stick a transistor radio in there on a microphone and make it work very well.
And I think that comes back to one of the most common problems is we're the last in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody else gets to do their things first. Everybody else runs over budget. And whose money does that take? It takes AV's budget.
Yep.
And so while even early on in the process, they may look at it and say, oh, we've got a $50,000, $60,000 budget. By the time they've done with everything else in construction, suddenly they're like, we only have 10,000. And they still want you to deliver the same product, which isn't necessarily possible. But there are strategic ways to help them understand it's worth putting in the extra money now, or do this part now and do that part later. And just helping them understand you might not get everything you want because our budget shrank, but it's important to know that what you did buy isn't just going to get thrown away later to put into something else later.
Right. I just like to point out that, Greg, I think your methodology is the correct methodology, and that's the best way to get a good result is a needs analysis. First, understand what they need, then what they want, and then how can we make this happen within your budget, and then start to work or negotiate. But without that needs analysis, it's very difficult.
Good point, Dan. Greg, going back to you, quick question, just, basis on our conversation going on here. Emergence Church, we've been there, great place, awesome venue. Any limitations? And I think when I was there with you, we walked around the entire building and we talked about what each room was for, what problems you had. You did mention something about the stairs there. It doesn't have anything to do with audio, but it's probably a good point. Any challenges, maybe not just Emergence, houses of worship in general? That particular venue was kind of like a flip almost, right?
Yeah. So in that particular church, we were walking into a very, very old traditional style church building that was becoming a very, very modern church building. And in the process, the entire building was getting flipped around. So it was the front, was now the back. And there was a massive amount of construction that was needing to happen in order to reach that goal. And the nice thing about Emergence is they really trusted our instinct to say, what do you need to get this done? And we were able to really lay out, what do you want to do now? What do you want to do in the future? And so there's a massive amount of wiring in that building that's untapped right now, and may never get tapped, but it's at least in place thinking through all of the potentials of things that they wanted to do in the future. Some of it is actually now coming back to become useful because as we're hitting COVID and there's limitations on room size, we had already pre-wired the building to get audio and video everywhere. And so now I'm just taking existing cables, popping them back alive, and they now have audio and video wherever they want to have it. So much easier and cheaper to do that in the early stages when all the walls were open, when everything was open, than to try to do that later. I had to convince them to spend the extra money to do that. But right now, it's suddenly proving out to be a really valuable investment that they made a long time ago.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I can give you an example of a church that did it the wrong way. They were moving into there's a few of those out there. They were moving from a small center into a new 3,000 seat venue. And the worship minister specified all of the camera locations and ran conduit to all of the camera locations. So if you can envision this fan-shaped room with camera locations on the very far side of the corners, going down to the front of the room, and one central location. So it was 4 cameras shoot. When we went in there and told them what the cost of the lenses would be for that 90-foot throw, they were a little upset. $20,000 worth of glass apiece. So we ended up moving those camera locations. But it was, unless you know what you're doing, laying out some of that infrastructure, hire a pro.
There you go.
Another thing I could jump in on that as a quick comment.
Yeah, Jim.
Some of these installs, such as churches or older buildings, sometimes you have to ask the question, is it a historical building? Yeah. Because in some of those cases, especially churches, once it's dubbed a historical building, it becomes very difficult to make change, certainly within the areas that we work in, to run cable and make things accessible. So one of the big questions in churches that I've come across.
Good point.
That question always is, can I drill this? Like, you need to what are you and are you not allowed to drill through? Face that on a recent thing. And we're like, okay, well, if we just pop through this, and I was like, wait, how old is this? And how important is this? Yep. Because the last thing we want to do is pop a hole in some decorative piece that's 250 years old and worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And sure enough, glad thing we didn't drill. We ended up going a completely different way with our wire because of that reason.
Good point.
Right. Or if there's asbestos flooring.
Yeah.
All right. Asbestos. Dan, you're going to segue into the next part here. So at the end of this, or we're heading towards the end here, the second part of this webinar, I'm going to talk about 3 main key takeaways, and we'll start with safety, as Dan segued with asbestos. In just a moment, guys, once again, we are doing webinars towards the end of the month, monthly. This one's a little bit early, like I said before. We have the holidays coming up, obviously. Next month, we'll be doing it around the same time. So be on the lookout for that. Weekly, we do have the podcast, which I'm the host of. 10-minute clips of just really knowledgeable, good information that we want to shoot out to you guys. So you guys are in the know, in the aware, and we're all on the same page, and we're doing this together. So definitely stay tuned to all of our social media channels. Okay. And then thanks all for tuning in. Everybody is still with us. Awesome. Here we go. Dan, getting to you, the first takeaway, and I'm glad you mentioned that, safety. So we talked about understanding the property or the location of the installations. Also, maybe you want to touch on integrating our gear or knowing what is there in terms of fire and safety. So gear that's there for emergency paging or situations like that. If you could just touch on safety and how important that is during these evaluations.
Sure. A lot of people are finally realizing that having a notification system, voice announcements in their building for emergency evacuation is an important thing. And the standards for that have been developing, I think in 2016, the NFPA came out with a new version that went into much, much greater detail on that. If you're involved in an emergency system, you really need to ask some questions. The minute somebody says, I want an evacuation system, I need an emergency system, that one word that tells you that you're going to be involved with some folks that are very, very cognizant of local codes and strict on local codes. So you're going to need to have some conversations with possibly the authority having jurisdiction there. Could be the fire marshal. In the military installations, it's the camp commander. But you need to know what the ins and outs of that are. A typical PA system, as Greg had an example where he needed to be able to shut down the PA system. That's the old standard. Anything that's not a fire alarm gets shut down in the case of a fire alarm or an emergency situation. These days, we can install a voice alarm system, a mass notification system that is technically supposed to be connected to the fire alarm so that they can interact in case one needs to take priority over the other. Those systems are becoming more and more common, and it really, if you can take a class in NFPA 72 for mass notification, I highly recommend it if you're going to be involved in any of these systems.
Awesome, Dan. Point number 2, Jim, this is for you. You mentioned how important it is to understand your client and their needs, taking the time to absorb the customer's needs before the design process, professional expertise, and your biggest question that you always pose is, how do you intend to use the system? With all these in mind, now do we not offer free design services?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Free design at toaelectronics.com.
That's it. That's simple. Just touch on the service briefly. Explain to the audience what we do, what we offer, and how we can help.
Well, what we do is to try to make a successful story out of every install. We try to interact with many of our clientele, reps, dealers, et cetera. And so we decided to come up with a free design service. So if you send us your information of what you're looking to accomplish, along with any diagrams of your building, if they're in CAD, that's great. We can open them. This way we can model some of the responses when necessary. Not all require it, but in certain applications, it's a good idea that we model the audio possibilities within a space. But you send over your budgetary requirements, all of that, and then we take a look at it. And then we'll take a look at questions that we may need to ask. And ultimately, when I get on the phone or one of our other associates gets on the phone and talks to the clients, we're going to ask, how do you want to use this thing? What's the intended, what's the expectation of the system besides just the hardware, and what are future needs? Kind of the same points I touched on before, but we just offer it through this free design service.
Awesome. And Greg, finally, to you, the last key point here is understanding future cost or hidden costs, actually, that may be involved when something does not get designed correctly, it gets under spec'd, the time loss involved, the long-term factors that are involved here. The list can go on and on, obviously. I'm sure you've seen them in real time, in real life. Briefly just touch on that subject.
Yeah. First off, I want to also just shout out to the TOA design services. I have used them myself. There are times in which I got to turn a quote and I just don't have the time to do the energy myself, and rather let TOA design their systems because they're going to design them better than I'm going to design their stuff because they know their stuff better. And so just want to say it's a great service and absolutely worth using. Even if you know what you're doing in the AV field, it's well worth the time to bring them involved in the project to make sure you're not missing something stupid. It saves you money. It saves you time. A, it's time that I'm not spending designing. B, it means that I didn't screw up and miss some little component that I didn't realize I knew, and now I end up paying for it out of my own pocket. So anyway, shout out to TOA Design Services. they're extraordinarily useful, and take advantage of them. As far as what you posed to me, though, I would say that I have walked into way too many situations where the system wasn't designed or was designed improperly, and I've had to make really bad have had to have really bad conversations with clients, explaining to them that they've lost a lot of money. I can think of one church in particular I walked into the day after it opened, or the week after it opened, and they said, our speakers don't sound good. Can you take a look? They had been open exactly 1 week, and they blew every single speaker that they had installed because they installed the wrong speakers, the wrong amplifiers, the wrong board. Everything was wrong. And they spent $30,000, $40,000 on this system. And I had to say, I'm sorry, there's nothing here salvageable. And they literally threw away $40,000 because they didn't have somebody else come and help them in this process to do it right from the beginning. They did it because they were trying to be on a budget. They were trying to save the money. And what they ended up doing was costing themselves a minor fortune. And so my rule of thumb when I'm working with clients is understand their number, understand where they need to be. Most importantly, understand what they can accomplish with that number, and help them understand that it's okay to not get everything up front, but build the infrastructure right. Every quote I've done, especially since COVID-19 has happened, has come out in phases because clients no longer have the same large budgets that they once had. And so years ago, I could quote something, they'd say, sure, let's go for it. Well, now everyone's crunching the numbers and crunching the budgets. And so I'm designing almost everything in 3 phases and saying, you told me your budget was this, you can get phase 1 and maybe phase 2 out of your budget, but there is a phase 3 still coming that you need to understand that that's important for you to get your overall vision. And let's move on what you are able to afford now with the understanding that this can grow towards the future.
Awesome, Greg. I love the idea of utilizing that phases mentality. I think that's, especially today, I think it's a great idea, to kind of break that up and be like, well, we'll get there, but we won't get there right away, but we'll get there eventually.
Yep.
That's a great way to do business. I love it. Awesome. All right, guys. I think that's it. I think we're good. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Greg. It's been a pleasure. I think what we really got out of this was, more importantly, is taking the time to understand your client's needs. Dan mentioned it multiple times. Greg mentioned it multiple times. Jim mentioned it multiple times. We here at TOA, we strive for that. We offer this free design service to, take that off your back and to make sure that you're speccing the right equipment for the job. So if you're using our gear, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you guys about it. Jim's available. I'm available. We have a bunch of other team members that are ready to go. We want to make sure that the right gear is being spec'd for the right job. We want to make sure that you yourself, your clients are safe, as Dan was talking about. And we don't want to see long-term scenarios that are going to cost money, that are going to cost your clients money. We want to make sure it's done right, the right way. If that takes time, if it takes phases, like Greg mentioned, then so it will be. And we want to make sure we get it right. So that's all key points. So thanks, guys. Once again, every month we are doing webinars towards the end of the month. Every week we're doing podcasts. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you're following our socials. We're here. We're working every day to make sure we give you guys the right information. We are developing new products based on the current scenarios. We have a great line of IP products coming out, which we may talk about in future webinars. Keep an eye out for product announcements. As you know, we released our 800 digital series, which we did a webinar on last month. Greg was there for that. And my colleague, Rick, great piece of equipment. We're also releasing our new IP horn speaker to go with our NSP80 SIP system. So all, awesome products that are coming down the line. Be on the lookout for those. We're going to have a lot more information on our socials. Please stay tuned. That's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I want to thank everybody that stayed around and stuck around. We appreciate it. We will see you guys shortly. Be safe out there. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. If you guys want to say bye as well, I'm checking out. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.